This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jespersen.
We're grateful to have you here on this episode of Real Talk on the heels of a big one. The Premier Danielle Smith with us in studio. The Flamethrower coming up at the end of this episode. These are your hot takes, your hottest takes, in fact, is submitted to talk@ryanjespersen.com. Going to be a bit of a lengthy one. John and I both have our Gatorade ready to go. We're going to be well hydrated. It'll be an extended edition of the Flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That coming up. Real Talkers coming at this from both angles. An interesting conversation with Premier. If you missed it, obviously you can find it on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. About 20 minutes digging into her perspective on this this pending referendum. Someone's going to write in and say, you're getting ahead of yourself, Jespersen. There's no pending referendum as of yet. And that person would be correct. But this is where it's trending. This is where it's headed. If you've got half a brain and you're paying attention to Alberta politics or federal politics for that matter, you can see how this is all going to line up. And this is what we got into with Alberta's Premier. The Liberals win. They pull off a miracle and they win their fourth straight election. Mark Carney forming a minority government, pissing off basically all of the prairies. Minus a few ridings, a couple in Edmonton, one down in Calgary maybe. But for the most part, collectively, the prairies hoped to send Pierre Poilievre to Ottawa to form a minority or ideally majority government. Didn't happen. So folks are, disappointed to say the least. Some of them so much so that they're going to rally as best they can to gather the hundreds of thousands of signatures that are needed to trigger this referendum on Alberta's future in Canada. Indigenous communities, First Nations chiefs are clapping back. So are some constitutional experts. Everybody's arguing. Folks are using ChatGPT and Google to try to figure out, for maybe the first time in a long time, exactly what's involved in leaving Canada, if you wanted to. Journalists ask the leader of the Bloc Québécois what he thinks about Alberta's plan or musings in Alberta to leave. He jokes that you've got to have a unique culture, and that culture can't just be oil and gas. Danielle Smith gives us a golden response to that on the show, and of course now everybody's buzzing. So we'll get into that. We're going to tackle an issue out of the gates today, auto insurance reform. Chances are your auto insurance, if you live in Alberta, is about to get more expensive. So we'll go there. Plus then Real Talkers will give you the floor as you respond to what you heard from Alberta's Premier. This is going to be an episode you're not going to want to miss, not 1 second of it. And we're grateful you're here for it. We want to let you know it's happening with the presenting sponsorship of Business Career College. And they've got a specific call out to those of you that are certified financial planners, those of you that are delivering financial advice for investors. More and more of the next generation of investors, we're talking Gen Z, millennials, about 3/4 of them polled say that they're at least intrigued by decentralized finance. And that means that they're going to have questions about Bitcoin, about the blockchain, about cryptocurrencies, and you want to be able to give them an informed answer, right? I mean, this is all about not just providing a better service to your clients, but future-proofing your own career. You're going to want to look into the Certified Digital Asset Advisor designation. This is the CDAA designation from Business Career College. Runs you all the way through from the very basics. Understand the why behind Bitcoin's creation. Why has it had a revolutionary impact? Learn about Ethereum, decentralized finance, smart contracts, wallets, custody, and exchanges. And then, of course, they'll get into it from there. NFTs, tokens, Web 3.0, crypto in your practice. You may be rolling your eyes. You may say, are you kidding me? Not kidding. This is where it's going, and this is what people expect to hear informed advice about from their financial advisors. So if you want to level up, if you want to future-proof your career, get started today. That's the CDAA designation, businesscareercollege.com. The promo code RYAN20, RYAN20, will knock 20% off your investment. Again, that's businesscareercollege.com. Here's the deal. The government of Alberta planning to implement a no-fault insurance system that'll be run and administered by for-profit insurance companies. The government taking the position that this is best for the province, that it's best for customers, that it's best for everyday Albertans. But new research shows that nobody's sold on the idea. In fact, Albertans, polling shows by Nanos research, are twice as likely. Albertans believe that they're going to be paying more if these changes go in. This, let's set the tone, amid rising costs with pretty much everything. Your borrowing is costing more right now. Your variable rate mortgage, your line of credit is costing you more right now. Your utilities are costing you more right now. Your groceries are costing you more right now. I'm not trying to whip you into a frenzy. I'm not trying to give you anxiety, but that's the facts. Let's get into the folks that have teamed up on this one. Jenny McCordie is joining us from the Canadian Bar Association. Nik Nanos is the one who steers Nanos research. Nice to see you both. Jenny, can you set the scene for us? What's the government looking at doing here, and how would it be different than the way that Albertans have been purchasing and utilizing auto insurance for years up to this?
Sure. In our existing system, when someone is injured in an automobile accident, they can seek compensation, they can seek assistance with treatment costs, etc. And when they go through that process, if they wish to have a lawyer, or if they see that the process is perhaps not treating them as fairly as they wish, they can get the help of a lawyer. They can go to the courts where they can have an adjudication on what is appropriate and what is fair to them. That's our existing system. In the proposed system, which is Bill 47, Albertans completely lose the right to go to the courts for compensation or to adjudicate on what is truly fair for them, unless there are a few very limited circumstances. For example, if a driver is criminally convicted, which is, of course, extremely rare. So in the proposed system, when they lose the right to go to the courts, what the government is proposing to replace that with is a system whereby for-profit insurance companies will determine the appropriate compensation, the appropriate treatment, and make those decisions. And the injured claimants will have no right to go to the courts to adjudicate on whether the insurance company's decisions are fair.
Now, presumably, is this entire thing, or at least is the government's line on this, that the idea is to try to keep insurance costs or insurance premiums down, that accident victims are being awarded too much money and everybody's getting too enthusiastic about litigating? I mean, what's the direction?
Well, I think there's a number of different angles. First of all, we know that insurance premiums are intended to go up in 2025 by 7.5%, and again up in 2026 by another 7.5%. And then when this new system comes into effect in 2027, the government is hopeful of a reduction. And I believe they were targeting something like $400 in 2027. And I have heard that that number is going down. So they may not have confidence in that number themselves. And then if we look at the research, which Mr. Nanos has organized, it sounds like Albertans also don't have confidence in that number coming back down.
Yeah, Nik, let's great to have you both on the show, by the way. Nik, nice to have an opportunity to chat with you, the guy whose name is on the research firm. You've built a business and you've established yourself across the country as somebody who truly understands how to figure out how people really feel about something. So can you take us into before we get into the numbers, how do you approach polling like this?
Well, in this particular case, we did this province-wide survey in Alberta. It included over a thousand individuals, and it was representative. So we had the right proportion of people in the northern rural part of the province, in the southern rural part of the province, and also the two cities. And what we did was we basically asked questions to unpack how people felt about the proposed changes, what they knew, and potential paths forward.
And did you find on this? I mean, I know you did because you've supplied us with the results. Let's dig into them. They've just been released. There are some pretty strong numbers here on how people collectively feel about this file.
Oh, absolutely. I think the one thing that was the most striking for me, and maybe we shouldn't really be surprised, is that Albertans really value and treasure their rights. More specifically, having the right to sue someone for compensation when they cause harm. So think of Albertans valuing their right to sue, and also Albertans really believing that people should be legally and financially responsible for their actions when it causes injury and harm. So they shouldn't, the thing is what they want basically is their rights to be pursued and for their rights to be protected and for people to be responsible. And, I think what we're seeing here is that a collision of those values that Albertans treasure with this proposal, which the survey suggests that people are much more likely to think that it's not going to yield any savings compared to thinking that it might yield savings.
Nik, do we know if Albertans feel demonstrably different about this than maybe our neighbors in BC and Saskatchewan or Canadians across the country?
Yeah, well, the thing is we didn't do a survey in other parts of the country on this specifically, but I'll tell you this, Ryan. These numbers for Albertans valuing their right to sue and holding people responsible, I would hazard to say, are probably higher than other provinces like Quebec, which is more likely to not value those things as much. And I think that's unique to the Albertan culture, kind of the belief in rights and also the belief in holding people accountable and responsible for what they do.
Yeah, I like it. It's like rights and responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
Ms. McCordie, do we see that play out in other applications of law? Like, is that something that's long been established or understood about, the ethos of Alberta?
Well, I haven't compared the Alberta litigation culture to the rest of the country, but certainly the clients that I see are interested in preserving their own rights, and they're interested in the parties that have wronged them being accountable, not just motor vehicle accidents, but in all aspects of my civil litigation practice.
Does the Canadian Bar Association have a position on this, like on this initiative? Have you taken a specific one?
Yes, in fact, we do. Nationally, the Canadian Bar Association decades ago took the position that no-fault insurance was not the correct direction anywhere in the country. And so that's I guess, a foundational view. I'm representing the Canadian Bar Association Alberta branch. And in that context, we're clearly aware that we have the National Foundation saying no fault, and then we have the benefit of Nik's research saying Albertans don't want this. So what we want to do is we want to turn the conversation around a little bit and remind people that when we're talking about the accident injured, they are not a cohesive group. They don't know each other. They don't have a lobby. They have to rely on government and insurers and lawyers or the justice system to identify what are their rights, how to protect their rights, how to speak up for them. Because everybody else has a lobby, but the accident injured do not. And those people are the most vulnerable. You started out your segment talking about affordability. Just think about the challenges of affordability when you've had an accident and you're trying to defend your rights and you can't afford your physiotherapy or whatever care you require, or you can't go to work. In those circumstances, you have the smallest, most vulnerable voice, and that's who we need to be remembering throughout this process.
Gilles in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says the problem with the changes in rates, they're going up while compensation is going down. He says the system in BC is cheaper than Alberta's. We also have others like Pin Chaser, who says my insurance keeps going up, and that's with a clean driving record. Kathy says my insurance company told me I should be happy that my insurance only went up 7.5%. I know one thing. I'm not a statistician, but I do know that 7.5% annual increases year after year after year after year after year at some point become completely unsustainable. Nik, what did Albertans tell you about the priority of this? Do Albertans even want to see changes to auto insurance?
Well, the thing is the very first question in the survey, we asked the Albertans what they thought the priorities for the government of Alberta should be, and at the very top of the list, at around almost one out of every two Albertans basically said that healthcare should be, or access to healthcare should be, the top priorities, and then cost of living. And I think it's fair to say that cost of living could include and includes stuff like auto insurance. Interestingly, less than 1% specifically said auto insurance or other issues related to insurance. So it's not really a top of mind or top priority, at least from the views of average Albertans. And the other thing is that when we asked about the proposed changes, we also asked, hey, is this urgent? Is this not urgent for the provincial government to do this? And about more than half of Albertans said that it was not urgent, 52%, and about 36% said that it was urgent. So, but the thing is this is really about the right to sue. Right? Like, let's face it, who doesn't want lower insurance premiums?
Yeah.
Who would be against lower insurance premiums? If it is possible to have lower insurance premiums, I think that's the case. But I think when Albertans look at the trade-off and the balance between the right to sue and keeping people responsible for what they do, that tips the scale or tips the balance in terms of that. And that is more important than saving money on the premium. So, I think what this speaks to is that what the government is proposing now, for average Albertans, that is, it doesn't really cut it. And that maybe there needs to be more dialogue and focus on this. And there needs to be more chat about, okay, what about people's rights to sue? And what about keeping people responsible? And how that can be part of the discussion related to a possible path forward on auto insurance in Alberta.
If you're just joining us on the Real Talk live stream presented by California Closets, that's Nik Nanos of Nanos Research. Jenny McCordie joining us at the Canadian Bar Association. Jenny, also some interesting numbers on who trusts whom. And Nik's polling revealed that an interesting comparison when you stack up the trust that Albertans have in lawyers versus the trust in insurance companies regarding who's going to work best or who will work in the best interests of their clients. You want to get into this?
Well, it was very interesting to see the results, and I won't speak to the actual numbers, but there was definitely a hierarchy, and I think accountants ranked higher than lawyers, and then down through the list below lawyers came insurers and politicians. The interesting thing that jumps out to me from that research is just that I think, generally people don't like lawyers, and everybody knows that. But they do know that if they have rights they need to have upheld, lawyers are the people who understand the process and who are willing to stand up for them. And I think people appreciate that. And they have, I guess, a lower degree of faith that politicians or insurers will be as invested in protecting people's rights.
Yeah, Nik, it is interesting, isn't it? Like, I participated in a conversation like this, a little bit of introspection because we invoked the fourth estate. We invoked journalism as well at the recent University of Alberta Chancellor's Forum on waning trust in institutions and how people's trust has lowered, including in the legal profession, including in the medical profession, in post-secondary, in journalism. Kind of an interesting trend. But this one, you get a chance to kind of dig in and see how that applies to legislation on insurance. Were you surprised at all in the numbers that returned?
Yeah, well, I was quite surprised. And the thing that we tested on was, the different stakeholders or potential players working in the best interests of clients, right? So, let's face it, there are different professions that might not be popular, but what's interesting is that when we ask people about lawyers and whether they would work in the best interest of clients, they actually score well, as do accountants. And I think it's one of those things where maybe you like or you don't like your lawyer. Jenny, I hope you don't get mad at me. Maybe you like or don't like your lawyer, but when you need your lawyer, you need your lawyer. And when you need your lawyer, you probably like your lawyer because they're here to protect your interests and they're here to make sure that you can navigate the system and that you are treated fairly and justly, which is basically all that anybody really asks for. And so, what it showed is that, this isn't a popularity contest. this is basically a practicality contest in terms of how people feel about lawyers and what they deliver. And from just looking at the numbers, it's not about whether lawyers are popular or not, or it's about working in the best interests of clients and people seeing, you know what, when I need a lawyer, I need a lawyer, and there's a reason why I need a lawyer, and it's to make sure that they're treated fairly and justly, and that everyone is treated fairly and justly.
I don't want to pile on lawyers here, Jenny. You don't want us piling on lawyers, but why don't we bring our elected representatives into the mix, Nik? Because you also have some interesting numbers on where trust is at around the provincial government overseeing a private no-fault insurance system, and those numbers are very low.
Yeah, and I think this is where it comes into probably people wanting a greater level of transparency on that front. That this also has to do with the why don't we just call it the interesting proposal? And I don't know if Jenny, you want to jump into in terms of the role of insurance companies in kind of making decisions about health treatments, making decisions about disputes, and all that kind of stuff, which kind of complicates things. And I think for a lot of people, and I think what this all speaks to is there's just got to be more talk about this, and there has to be more of a spotlight on what this is about, so that people can make a fair decision about the path forward that they want.
So, yeah, I think. Sorry, Ryan.
No, go ahead.
If we look at the system as it currently stands, insurers play a role in helping people to determine what treatment, what medical care they should have after an accident, even in our current system. And that role works quite well. There's quite a dialogue between insurers and doctors and the injured people to find out what treatment is appropriate. It doesn't always work perfectly. And, in every system, there's always room for improvement. And when it doesn't work perfectly, that's when people come to my office and say, I need more physio, but my insurer is not listening to me and they want to cut off my treatment. In the proposed system, that kind of consultation is basically eliminated. Nobody will be coming to their lawyers to say, I haven't been treated fairly, because the for-profit insurer gets to make the decision about how much care should be paid for the injured person. And I think when Nik did his research, there were focus groups involved, and there was an interesting discussion which came out of that process of the focus groups where Albertans were talking to each other and saying, wait a minute, isn't that a potential conflict of interest? And of course, that's a concern. Can a for-profit insurance company make the best decision for an injured person, which helps that injured person get better and gives them the support they need right when they need it?
Nik, one of the really cool things about your polling, and I'll show it here on the screen, is you present the views on this by provincial vote profile. In other words, how somebody feels about this based on, or at least the relevance of how someone voted to how they feel about this file. And on first glance, you're the expert, not me, but on first glance, it appears to me that there's not like a huge divergence of thought or conviction on this. Can you take us into it?
Yeah, we also ask people whether they vote for the UCP or the NDP, or who they lean towards provincially. And this is why I made the first comment. This is really about values and rights. It's something higher than political partisanship or anything like that. That there really is a consensus, generally factoring the margin of error for the survey, that the views are very similar between UCP supporters and supporters of the New Democrats. And I think that's the most striking thing. I just look at this and it's kind of like, I don't know where the votes are for this. Seriously, you look at this and, for average, this has to do with the things that are important to Albertans, what they value, and almost like a worldview on, what, you should be responsible for your actions, and you should be held responsible for your actions. That's why we need a justice system to hold people responsible for their actions. And I think, I think this speaks to the situation. And, the other thing is that there weren't really significant differences or massive differences based on whether you lived, what part of the province that you lived in. There were differences based on age, I would like to say. That was kind of interesting. With the older that you were, the more likely were you to have questions about the initiative. And if you were younger, a little less likely, but still a majority opinion. So we have to be very clear on that front. What does this mean? Maybe this means that the more experience that you have with auto insurance, the more you realize that, hey, maybe this isn't the perfect proposal to move forward with because you actually have life experience as a middle-aged or older Albertan.
Yeah.
But I think this all comes down to, yeah, people want lower premiums. And I think it's really important to have a discussion about lower premiums, automobile premiums, and how they can be achieved. But the thing is throwing out your right to sue, throwing out holding people responsible for their actions, I think is a real non-starter for Albertans.
Yeah, no kidding. And here's an interesting point as well. And this again on our live chat, powered by Park Power. Ms. KD wonders, Jenny, maybe we'll put this to you. She says, at what point will increases in insurance lead to folks driving uninsured? She says, and again, will disproportionately affect people that are already living in poverty. That's something that's, I mean, obviously nobody wants to see people driving uninsured. It's something that could have disastrous consequences financially and otherwise. But is that something that's on the radar?
Well, obviously, cost of living, cost of insurance is a huge issue for people. And, I can't speak to the number of people that might choose not to have insurance in preference to paying some other bill. I think it certainly is a risk. And that's why we have to say, we have to remind people that this is not a dichotomy between have lower premiums and no fault insurance or have higher premiums and our existing system. The Canadian Bar Association has been involved, as have a number of other lobby groups, I think, been involved in discussions with the government and in presenting all sorts of alternate ideas and proposals which might assist with the existing system and answer these questions of affordability. And, those proposals, and I won't go into them in detail, but obviously, for example, if we had fewer motor vehicle accidents, that would be a very good answer to insurers paying out less. So looking at measures that reduce motor vehicle accidents, speeding, winter tires, things like that. And then looking within the existing system, when we go to pursue justice through the court system, what does that cost and how can that be adjusted so that it preserves people's right to have a court determine. It preserves responsibility and accountability and justice, but we maybe adjust the system in various ways to make that process faster, less expensive. And there's infinite possibilities for the ways things can be tweaked. Another thing which really hasn't entered the dialogue yet at all is that these proposals are specifically related only to people injured in motor vehicle accidents. And so we're looking at a system whereby if you are injured in a trip and fall accident because of someone's negligence, you get a whole different set of rules for how you would be compensated and how people look after you. And so there's going to be a really interesting mismatch in application if we have no fault insurance for motor vehicle accidents and a regular system for everybody else.
Denis, in closing here, Denis got an interesting point in our live chat, says that anecdotally he's seeing more BC and Saskatchewan plates on the road in Alberta as more and more people try to avoid paying for auto insurance in Alberta. It may just be that everybody's spending their vacation dollars in Canada and everybody wants to visit the most beautiful province in the country. That's why everybody's coming from Saskatchewan and BC to Alberta. But I wonder if that actually is a thing. Did either of you, through the course of this exercise, have an opportunity to see if there's a model, an insurance model that's working especially well in Canada? Like I know ICBC and SGI in the neighboring provinces have caught people's attention for that kind of like publicly owned, publicly administered kind of a model. But is there one that either of you have seen that's working particularly well that could work in Alberta the same way?
Well, I would speak to that and just say I think our existing system can be adapted, it can be improved. The justice system in all areas is being.
It's okay, Jenny. We kept you 2 minutes past what we asked for, so everybody wants to talk to you now. Exactly.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I was just going to say the existing system can be improved. We all know the justice system can be improved with various adaptations. It's always in evolution. And our best answer is to continue to evolve it and to make it what people want it to be so that it meets their needs.
I love it. That's Jenny McCordie, who's been joining us, speaking from an Alberta perspective on behalf of the Canadian Bar Association. Nik Nanos joining us as well, one of Canada's preeminent pollsters, to say the least. You can actually dig into Nik's research yourself if you want to get into the real nitty-gritty by checking out the website. That's nanos.co, and we will link to that. We'll link to that in our show notes. Again, nanos.co is where you can check out Nanos' research. Thanks to both of you for taking the time to talk to us and for doing this. This is important stuff. This is literally the kind of thing. I mean, a lot of stuff, a lot of politics we talk is a little bit esoteric. It's not really going to have a tangible impact on everybody's everyday lives, but this is something that will impact almost everybody in the province. Safe to say?
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, you got it. Good conversation there. Nik Nanos, I think that might have been Nik's debut on the show, as a matter of fact. And the Canadian Bar Association doing really good work on that as well. There are some numbers I want to jump in on this with the returns on this polling, because it really is interesting, like on who people trust and who they don't trust. And there might be some surprises there and maybe not, but I also want to jump into the live chat. Plain Power, for example, says, I wonder if these insurance companies have personal ties to the United Conservative cabinet, kind of like Turkish Tylenol, kind of like these private surgical facilities. You see, like when people's trust is compromised or broken, then it starts to impact how they view virtually everything associated to that institution, in this case, government, right? So we'll get to that in just a quick second. Before we do, obviously, you guys, I think on the heels of our hilarious, our fantastic and wildly entertaining Real Talk Roundtable, most recently when we talked to Darren Hagen, and he was the winner of the Edmonton Film Prize, and he joined two other filmmakers on our most recent episode talking about Northwest Fest and what's coming up there. If you're interested in the arts, the visual arts, nonfiction storytelling, and of course, the experience of sitting in a movie theater, smelling the popcorn, and taking in some of the best that Canadian and international filmmakers have to offer, you're going to want to make sure you check out Northwest Film Fest. That kicks off May 8th. That was yesterday. We talked to these filmmakers, of course, on opening night, and now we want to let you know that it is wide open all the way through to the 15th. You can check out their website. That's northwestfest.ca. They've got unbelievable lineups ready for you. Free Leonard Pelche. Half a century ago, the U.S. government put Leonard Pelche in prison for murder. This year, he's now home, but he's not pardoned yet. Still innocent, though. That goes tonight, the 9th of May. They've also got The Hobby, Tales from the Tabletop. This is board games on the Vegas Strip. A fantastic feature coming up. Shorts for breakfast. They've got Speak, 5 elite high school orators spending a year predicting powerful performances, chasing victory at the world's biggest public speaking competitions. Coming up on the 10th of May, that's Saturday night, Sally Ride, the first American woman in space, led a groundbreaking but privately complex life. This is revealed in full for the first time by her partner, Tam O'Shaughnessy, in the film Sally. That goes at 7:15 p.m. on Saturday, May 10th. And there's more. There's way more. You can check out the full lineup at northwestfest.ca. And remember, Real Talk patrons, check your email. You've got 2 free tickets to Northwest Film Fest just waiting for you. We're going to be looping in our Real Talk channel members later today as a token of our appreciation for everything you do. The team at Kubi Renewable Energy has the We're Hiring sign up in the window right now, and they want to make sure that you know that Solar by Kubi, that's Canada's fastest growing solar installer, is leveling up their team right now, and they'd love for you to be a part of it. Nobody's going to be installing more solar in the province of Alberta than Kubi this summer. They're going to be doing it across BC as well. Based out of Kamloops and Kelowna. In Alberta, it's Lethbridge, Calgary, and Edmonton. They've got opportunities in all 5 of those cities right now. Check out the careers link. Again, that's Kubi, Kuby.ca. If you're an engineer, a designer, maybe you've got your ticket, you're an electrician, you've been working, maybe you're an apprentice, maybe you work in sales, there's a fit for you at Solar by Kubi. Again, check out the careers link. Oh, and you can grab a free solar quote as well on their website. That's kubi.ca. North Road Investment Council, a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing. Marshall and Carrie and the team, they're familiar with these questions that may be keeping you up at night. You know, how do I make sure I don't run out of money if I'm lucky enough to live into my 90s? Do I actually have enough to retire? Or am I fooling myself? How do I protect my savings from taxes and inflation or maybe a market crash? If you don't even know which questions to ask right now, then it's definitely time to talk to the team at North Road Investment Council. They've got certified financial planners and chartered financial analysts that can answer your biggest retirement and financial planning questions. And here's the deal. You pay a per hour fee. They're not collecting commissions paid by selling you investment products, so you can have the confidence that you're getting the wealth advice that you need. Plus, they offer exclusive digital risk advisory services. That sets them apart. You can learn more and connect with the team by visiting their website, northroadic.com. And a pretty exciting meeting yesterday, John, about our 4th annual Real Talk Golf Classic. That's coming up on, Thursday, June 19th at the Ranch. We're proud to partner with the Ranch Golf and Country Club. Nobody does more tournaments, literally nobody, in the province of Alberta than the Ranch, and it's easy to understand why. Their team is the absolute best at making guests feel welcome, at making sure you have the best swag out there for your tournament guests, and of course the steak dinners or whatever you want your dinner to look like. Incomparable. They do a fantastic job. We've still got registration open at our tournament. You can check out our website, ryanjespersen.com/events. But if you're in charge of the golf tournament for your group, corporation, maybe it's a fundraiser for a nonprofit, whatever it is, they've got you covered at the Ranch. They're going to look after you. You just let them know Jespo sent you. I love this Vimeo tour of all 18 holes on the Ranch. I'm showing you right now the water hazard that I hit literally every single time I visit. Except for once, John. Once, I birdied 18. Nice shot off the tee, a pitching wedge in, stuck it within about 8 feet, and managed to hit the putt against all odds. Against all odds. We're looking forward to that. Hey, can I ask a personal question about your car insurance?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Do you pay close attention to what you pay for car insurance? Do you know?
Oh,
Are
yeah,
you aware?
100%.
Have your premiums gone up?
Oh, yeah. We've talked about this on the show.
Past few years?
Many times. Yeah, I had, not only did mine go up the end of last year, it went up, I think I misspoke the first time I said it, but it went up about maybe $25 a month, which over a year, I don't know, I'm not a quick mathematician, but it's a few $100. And then most recently, back in October, I got an email that pretty much said, hey, my insurance company is leaving Alberta. They're in 4 different provinces. I think Ontario, BC, or not BC. BC's ICBC. Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. Ken in the chat referenced it as well, and I said the name. If you want to go to the chat and see it, I'm not going to say it on here. But they are getting out of Alberta, and the email they sent me was basically, things aren't profitable. Sorry. We're losing money. We can't stay viable. Basically saying if people get in accidents and we can't pay them out when they're hurt, this isn't a viable business anymore. We're sorry. But this specific province, Alberta, we are pulling out. So I'm good till like July, and then I've got to look for a new insurer.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Have you done any shopping around yet?
Not yet. I'm super scared too. I'm just, you should see me driving right now. I'm like, do not get in any sort of, accident, no tickets, no pullovers, no nothing until July, because I know that whatever I'm going to go pay from an insurer that I haven't been with for years, like I have been with this one, is going to be more. Yeah.
I can't ask you to get personal without getting personal myself. The only reason I don't necessarily volunteer my experience or what our family's paying for insurance, auto insurance, the reason why I didn't bring it up in that interview is because in the spirit of taking personal responsibility, we had a really bad year for car insurance. Mm-hmm. Like I had a bad year for tickets, a pretty significant one in particular, my own fault. I take responsibility. Pleaded guilty, paid the fine. Mm-hmm. But I knew that my insurance was going to go up for that for sure. Like it wasn't 10 over. It was quite a bit more than that. Don't speed, kids. And then we had an accident involving our family vehicle, the one that my wife drives, which is like a higher value vehicle. And you'd be surprised when you scrape up against something or you need body work. The cost of that is quite a bit more than you might expect. Maybe someone will write in with a story where they they thought that their car, the damage to their vehicle was going to be $9,000 and it ended up being $2,500. But I usually hear it the other way around.
No,
I usually hear, what movie is that where someone's like, that'll buff right out. It was sort of thought that might be our scenario. And then you find out that like minor scrapes can be like, $9,000 to $15,000. Or if you write off a vehicle and you end up paying more, you expect your insurance to go up. So we expected our insurance to go up. I'm not going to enter, you start talking about numbers. It's a pretty dramatic increase for us, but we expected it. We required significant repairs on a nice vehicle, and I got a pretty big speeding ticket. So there you go. That's kind of the way it goes for us. But I'd be curious to know how real talkers are feeling about this. And collectively, like the stats kind of line up.
I wonder where
Alberta Rancher in plain language, the only damn thing that comes down with car insurance is my pants when they increase rates yet again. Alberta Rancher, putting it in terms everyone can understand.
People are commenting in the chat, we should go to Costco insurance. Maybe, hey, Costco's got deals on everything. Maybe they got a deal on, they got auto and home insurance. I saw that.
What?
Last time I was in there, like re-upping my card, I saw a sign that said that. I was like, oh my gosh, they offer insurance. So
Really?
yeah, maybe I'll go to Costco and get the deal. And
Well, you can get a hot dog at the same time. M. Aitken says my son's insurance dropped significantly when he moved to BC, which is, and I keep hearing that again and again and again and again. I've also talked, again, just like at a civilian level of understanding, but folks, I know that we have friends listening from Saskatchewan right now. I'd love to hear from you on this. Even if you hear this later, send us an email, talk@ryanjespersen.com. Maybe I'll ask our buddy Quick Dick McDick about this. He's kind of our Saskatchewan correspondent. But SGI, it's like a basically, let's call it a Crown Corp, right? Like it's a publicly owned insurance entity in Saskatchewan. And you think like Saskatchewan's wired very similarly to Alberta, like politically and otherwise, kind of the whole freedom thing. Like, right, I mean, there are nuanced differences, but for the most part, you find sort of a collective spirit between those two prairie provinces. I don't know how Albertans would feel, and it would be kind of strange. It would be kind of interesting to see a conservative government create a Crown Corp to address rising insurance costs. You wonder if maybe the liabilities or the kind of the exposure for the government vis-a-vis taxpayers might not be great, but you wonder if that might be a model that would work better for Alberta. What I think the reality here is that, and one of the sort of the recurring comments that we're seeing here in the live chat is that trust in government right now is very low. And I don't think people believe, at least certainly not the majority of people believe, that changes to auto insurance would be prompted by what's best for Albertans or what's best for consumers. Rather, I think a lot of people probably feel like this has everything to do with what's best for insurance companies.
Well, yeah, if mine's leaving the province, I would guess that others are as well or are considering it, and that's what the government is considering now, is how to keep these companies, because what's going to happen is you're going to have we don't want less insurance companies, because then there's a monopoly and they're just going to raise the prices. So in that vein, I think the government's doing the right thing. I'm just not sure how they're going to handle this. And man, when I got that email, I was like, wow, this is actually real. Like this is a bad landscape in Alberta. And I mean, people in the chat right now are talking about how somebody said they pay $600 a month for insurance.
I believe it.
Jesus.
I believe it.
That's
and I
crazy.
think like right now, and especially insurance is kind of like the last frontier where you can be like classist, ageist, sexist.
Oh, yeah.
Like you can.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like works in interesting directions. Like if you are a 16-year-old male driver who's done absolutely nothing wrong and who has a clean driving record because you're just getting started, you're going to be paying more than people could wrap their minds around for insurance.
Yeah. Like
you hear of people, they try to help their son buy a vehicle right out of the gates, turn 16, turn 17, whatever. Maybe the kid's been working like a whatever, at a bus or at a restaurant or something, making $15 an hour and trying to put the money away. The parents help out. You buy a first vehicle, your first car for like $10,000 or whatever you buy it for. And then you end up paying like $6,000 a year in insurance or like $5,000 a year in insurance for a $10,000 car. Nobody would accept that, right? So I'd be curious. Real numbers go a long way. If you are willing to divulge to us what you're paying for car insurance in the chat, it could help shape this conversation for sure. Neil tossing $25 into our super chat. He says, I don't want to shout out. Tough shit, Neil. He says, I'm just trying to avoid subscriptions in my life, but I do believe in paying for quality content. He says, I never get a chance to join the chat. Thanks for doing what you do. Neil, thanks for you. We appreciate you. How about this one from Joanne, who says, just moving from Spruce Grove to Edmonton. If you're outside the province of Alberta checking out this show, that's like a 15-20 minute drive max. She says, just moving from Spruce Grove to Edmonton caused my insurance to go up $700 a year. No accidents, no tickets. That from Joanne. Wow. I wonder if that has something to do with crime in Edmonton. Right? We've shared with the audience a little bit. I try to have two messages that I bring to the audience. Come and live and work and play downtown. It's safe. And also, my car keeps getting fucked up downtown. Those are my two messages, and they're both true. But we've told you a couple of times, my car's been vandalized a couple of times over the past year, and it's expensive. And on both fronts, as a matter of fact, I paid cash because it didn't make sense to go through my insurance company. I see some of you, Aaron in our chat says, if at all possible, pay cash when you can. If you get in a car accident, says avoid the insurance company. Says it's not easy for many people. Aaron says, I know that. But at the end of the day, the premiums lose us money. You'll see a lot of people, a fender bender or whatever, even if it's costing you $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, people are going to try to pay cash instead of going through their insurance company because they don't want their premiums to go up. How about this from Ken K, who says, Johnny, my daughter got rear-ended a month before her insurance expired. The other driver also had coverage with the same company, says my daughter got way underpaid for her car and says there was zero support. That from Ken K. His daughter not getting the support that they would have expected. Idris, meantime, says Costco hot dog lunch. Real talk, coming with the good ideas. We're full of good ideas, Idris.
I got into a little fender bender. I told you back at the end of winter there, and I was driving. A guy came out of an alley in a wheelchair, and the person in front of me slammed on their brakes. So did I. I slid into her. And she was a younger girl. She explained she was a student. She was really worried about going through insurance, her insurance going higher. I was like in the same boat. I'm like, mine just went up. There wasn't any extensive damage. No one was injured. So we just came to, I was like, hey, you got some scratches. I'll pay for the scratches or whatever. But, and then, so that's the gauge I'm getting from people just because that happened was that she was scared. Being a young student, probably has had only insurance for a few years or whatever, that you cannot report things now because, before it would be you would report things because you're like, I don't want to pay the full cost of this, or I'm not at fault, or someone was hurt. I want to take care of it and be responsible. Now people are trying to find every reason not to report things, which is just going to skew numbers and all these stats that we try to use on accidents and everything, because everything's going under the radar. So it's just, it's a bad landscape we're in right now with these high insurance costs. I hope we figure out something, but this is kind of the same thing. Like if you look in every province, it's not like there's no. I mean, somebody mentioned in here that Nova Scotia or maybe Newfoundland has pretty good insurance, but they're all on the rise. They're all on the rise.
Every one of us, real talkers, we're all going to be which.
Can I get out of province insurance for my car in Alberta?
Where you're insuring your car in Nova Scotia?
Why do you have Nova Scotia plates?
I got to drive back there once every 5 months.
I go there once a year.
Yeah, exactly. Scarlett says my insurance nearly doubled this year. Who can afford this? The question is nobody really. There isn't, there's obviously a portion of our population that maybe we all have, we know somebody like this that they wouldn't even notice if their paycheck didn't go through, or they wouldn't even notice if somebody was pilfering money from them for months and months. But the average person notices big time when your insurance premiums double. And you look at Albertans paying among the highest rates for things like utilities as well, and you recognize why this is something that a lot of people are really concerned about. Here's Idris again. Here's another, $600 plus a month for Idris. Says no accidents, no parking tickets, no speeding. What? And so I figure, well, Idris has got to be driving Maseratis. No, says we have 2 Acuras. So Idris says that he bought an e-bike to be able to drive less because it's going to cost him less. What are e-bikes though? $4,000, $5,000. So he spent, I guess what's that for him though? 9 months of insurance. No big deal. Might as well just buy an e-bike, right? I get it for sure. This is pretty interesting stuff, and I like really neat to have Nik Nanos on the show. The guy's brilliant at what he does, but you look at like some of these numbers on where folks' trust is at in institutions, and it's amazing. Like the level of trust in institutions. We talked about this in the segment because it made sense to stack up lawyers versus insurance companies. And to dig into this, this is the level of trust. So this is the polling conducted by Nanos in partnership with the Canadian Bar Association. Again, nanos.co if you want to read it all yourself. But 60% of Albertans polled, 60% do trust accountants to work in the best interest of their clients. I'm surprised at that. I thought that number would be higher. But a majority of people, but a modest majority, 60% trust accountants to work in the best interest of their clients. It should be noted that about 30% are neutral on it, but 6% absolutely do not trust accountants, okay? The number drops for lawyers. 52% of people trust their lawyers. You're talking about your own lawyer. 52% of people trust lawyers to work in their best interest. 13%, so that number jumps dramatically, do not trust. So that's not a neutral position. They do not trust lawyers to work in the best interest of their clients. But then it just plummets from there, right? 21%. So 1 in 5 of us, 1 in 5 trusts our own insurance company to work in the best interests of our clients. In other words, to work in our best interests. Only 1 in 5. And look at the skyrocket, the number of those who do not trust. 40%. So almost half, not quite, but almost half of people actively do not trust their own insurance company to work in their best interests. And it's even more bleak for politicians. Fewer than 1 in 5. 18% of Albertans trust politicians to work in the best interest of voters in their riding. That is bonkers. And an even higher number, 44% actively do not trust politicians. Almost half do not trust politicians to work in the best interests of voters in their own riding. So basically, we don't trust the people that we vote to represent us. What do you make of that? M8 says our insurance premiums went up 30% last year. I'm not sure what it went up by yet. This year we haven't yet seen, but we both have 40 years of clean driving records. That's the part I can't wrap my mind around. When our insurance jumped up, and again, it jumped up dramatically, we're having to make some changes as a family. We're pulling one of our vehicles off insurance and putting it in a C can in the country. That's one of the things we're doing to manage that cost. But when you're like M8 and you and whoever you're living with, your partner, you've got 40 years of clean driving records and your insurance goes up by 30%.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, what are you supposed to make of it? Like, I think most people, you go, if your costs are going up, think of utility costs, right? Now, we understand, electricity, natural gas, whatever, it can get more expensive unless you're with Park Power. If you go to parkpower.ca/realtalk, you'll be paying the lowest rates in the country. You'll definitely be... Well, let me say you'll be paying the lowest rates in Alberta. I can't speak nationally, but you'll be paying the lowest rates in Alberta with Park Power. But I understand people will say, okay, we're not going to run the air conditioner when we're not home. Or we're putting in new windows to make our home more efficient. Or we're going to make sure that we turn all the lights off or change the light bulbs or whatever it is. You're taking steps for your family to be more environmentally responsible, and at the same time you recognize that the benefit is it's going to lower, and it's going to help your bottom line. It's going to lower your utility costs. You're doing what you can, generally speaking. Interesting to hear our guests talking about kind of the culture, the thought in Alberta. Danielle Smith touched on this yesterday. Different angle, but we'll get to that. But talking about how Albertans are all about personal responsibility, and that manifests itself in this conversation. We understand taking responsibility. If I want to run my air conditioners all day and my electricity bill is going to be higher, so be it. I've made that choice. Right? If I get in a bunch of accidents, or if I'm speeding, if I'm driving irresponsibly, if I'm a liability or a perceived liability to my insurance company, my insurance rates are going to go up. We can recognize that. We can understand that. That's easy to understand. But when your rates are up by 20 or 30 or 40% or double, like Scarlett just told us, and you have a clean driving record, you didn't get a DUI. You didn't rear end somebody and flee the scene, right? You're not getting speeding tickets 50 plus over the speed limit on the QE2. Well, then what are you supposed to believe? And what can you control in all this? If there's nothing you can control in all this, then what are you supposed to do about it? This is something that we would encourage you, and at the end of the day, it all comes down to what can you do about this? Number one, contact your MLA. I know that I feel sometimes cynical about the value of writing letters and emails because many of you will report as you CC us on your emails to your elected officials at the federal, provincial, and municipal level. We love when you CC talk@ryanjespersen.com there so we know the types of messages that the politicians are receiving. But many of you will follow up with us and say, I didn't even get the dignity of a response. I didn't even have the courtesy of a reply. And we understand that. But collectively, there is power in the public voice, and we do encourage you to contact your elected officials and let them know that you're not happy about this. We also had Mark McCordie on this. If you want to search our archives on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, he's a personal injury lawyer, and obviously he comes at it from an invested perspective, right? Mark absolutely hates this, and it was a great conversation. After we wrap this episode, the live stream, we'll punch that interview into the show notes on the podcast and on YouTube so you can check that out. We want to take a look at our conversation, our exclusive with Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith in our most recent episode. That was the 8th of May. If you haven't checked it out, be sure to do so. We'll get to some of your emails and a lengthy edition of the Flamethrower coming up. But first, if you don't have May 14th and 15th circled on your calendar and you're working in the energy industry, like many of your fellow Albertans, I want to make sure that the 2025 Nisku Energy Show is on your radar. This is coming up next week. I'm proud to be hosting it at the beautiful Silent Ice Sports and Entertainment Center. That is an amazing venue. This event is produced by the Leduc, Nisku, and Wetaskiwin Region Chamber of Commerce. You can check out yorkchamber.ca to get tickets today. This is a hub, basically, the first time they've ever done it, for local innovation and collaboration. The show is going to highlight the expertise, the advancements that are shaping Alberta's future. Explore the possibilities and excellence in the heart of Alberta. It all kicks off with a breakfast on May 14th. The Premier's going to be there. This is your chance to rub shoulders with industry executives, with innovators. There's a job fair on site as well. There's still room to sign up to be an exhibitor as well. You can check out pricing and availability, although a lot of it is selling out. The interest in this event is big. Again, yourchamber.ca is where you can get tickets to the 2025 Nisku Energy Show coming up on the 14th and 15th of May. Athabasca University reminding you about the programs and courses that are ready for you to check out right now at athabascau.ca. Hundreds and hundreds of opportunities from open undergraduate programs, flexible graduate programs like their MBA, even on-demand professional development. The beauty about Athabasca University is that you're dictating your own pace of study. You want to work ahead? Perfect. You need to take some time off for family, for vacation, for mental health, just to go and enjoy your summer. Whatever the case is, nobody's hassling you. You're picking your own pace, and your only commute is to your device. It doesn't get any better than that, and that's why tens of thousands of Canadians are proud alum of Athabasca University. Get started today by applying at athabascau.ca. California Closets, proudly Canadian-owned and operated, making the most of whatever space you need with custom organizational systems. Some of their customers are coming to them with this primary bedroom challenge. They've been dreaming of a walk-in closet that'll change their lives every single morning. Maybe it's a laundry room that's just always out of control. You know, the piles everywhere. You'd love for that to be more organized. Or maybe it's your garage. This spring, once and for all, you're going to turn that into a space not only that's well organized, not only that takes some of the stress out of your routine, but also a space you love hanging out in. Garage storage cabinets from California Closets are a perfect way to make that happen. You can request a free consultation today on their website, californiaclosets.ca. Don't forget, all of their work guaranteed for life. And if you don't have plans yet for Mother's Day, that's this weekend, my friends. Friesen Brothers has you covered at all of their Fresh Market stores. That's a Mother's Day brunch coming up on the 10th and 11th of May, Saturday and Sunday. Friesen Brothers Fresh Market stores hosting an all-you-can-eat Mother's Day brunch featuring all your favorite traditional brunch treats, along with special desserts created by Friesen Brothers Red Seal chefs. They've got family-friendly prices, $22 for adults, $15 for seniors, just $10 for kids 12 and under. The perfect occasion to celebrate with the whole family. You can step into one of those stores. That's Edmonton, Glenora, Rabbit Hill, Stony Plain, Hinton, Peace River, Fort Saskatchewan, and Drumheller. Or you can check them out online at friesen.com. That's the Mother's Day brunch at Friesen Brothers, proudly Alberta grown and Alberta owned. Gordon with an interesting comment in our live chat, ushering in this conversation, a quick one. We're going to take a look at our interview with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith on the 8th of May. Gordon just says, separatism in Alberta estimated to be at about 25% right now in the context of public support. He says, so 1 in 4 people want to secede, want to leave Canada. Says, think about that. 1 in 4 when you're out walking around. 1 out of every 4 people you meet wants to leave, says Gordon. Scary indeed. An interesting conversation with Alberta's Premier on the show yesterday, and as we discussed, as Johnny and I debriefed after the interview, we recognize that there's a million things we want to talk to Danielle Smith about. I got a passionate email from Les who let me know that he was disappointed with the interview because we didn't get into meaningful conversation about the Canada Disability Benefit being clawed back and ACE recipients getting screwed. And Les makes a great point. Some of you were like, where was the conversation on the looming teachers' strike? That's going to be a reality, and that's a fair point as well. Some of you wanted to know about Danielle Smith's promise to fix healthcare in 90 days. We're at almost 3 years since that province was made. Fair enough. I wanted to ask her about auto insurance, being that we had Nik Nanos and Julie on the show today from the Canadian Bar Association. But the fact of the matter is, all the talk in Alberta right now, politically and otherwise, is about Alberta's future in Canada. Whether or not that's a sane direction for us to be aiming our conversation in or not remains to be seen. But we obviously spent the lion's share of the conversation of that interview talking to Alberta's Premier about lowering the requirements to trigger a referendum. The message collectively from First Nations leaders, chiefs, and the Grand Chief of the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nations and others. I asked her a pointed question, which we're about to play for you. How would she feel legacy-wise about being the Premier that ushered Alberta out of Canada? If you missed it, here's that exchange. If it went this far, are you prepared, legacy-wise, to be the Premier that ushers Alberta out of Canadian Confederation?
Sure don't want to be. That's why I have said that I believe my job is to get a better deal with Canada and a new deal with Canada. And that's what I'll be focusing on. I'm going to enter into those discussions in a spirit of hope and goodwill, as I did when Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister. Sadly, those hopes were dashed after 2.5 years. But it's a fresh start, and I'm looking forward to seeing if we can make some progress.
Okay, so that's the Premier on the show yesterday. She says she doesn't want to be the Premier to usher Alberta out of Confederation, but of course that threat looms. And realistically, I think that the average Albertan is prepared to see some form of a referendum initiative over the next while. It's coming. And when it does, how prepared will Albertans be to hit it head on? We just saw that comment in our live chat. 1 in 4 Albertans, it's estimated, is keen on the idea of exploring Alberta separation. I wonder if it actually came down to it. Like if you right now were at a point where you had to vote yes or no on it, would you be there? All in? Or do you require more information? Now, we know for a fact, and you're about to hear it in the Flamethrower, that this audience, I hesitate to use a word like is split, but there's varying opinions through the audience on what the future of Alberta should look like. Did the conversation yesterday with Premier, did her appearance on the show, did anything that she said in studio change your mind, sway you, catch your interest at all? John, was there like a moment where you went, I hadn't considered that angle before?
No, but that was the question you asked where I thought you were being poignant. Like, do you want this to be your legacy kind of thing? And I did, a little bit of a facial expression there, but I mean, it's impossible to catch Danny on anything. She's very well, she's opinionated. She's a very good communicator. And yesterday as well, you're talking about these other topics we should have hit. Man, it's 20 minutes. You only get 6 questions. But I did like that you focused on what we all wanted to hear, which was about separation. We could have gone a million different ways with a bunch of different things. Everyone will be mad we didn't set her on fire in the middle of the studio. But I still think, as she's speaking, I know in her mind, she's smart. She knows this isn't going to go down. I still believe, in my gut that this is a tactic. This is a card. This is a playing tool. But I do feel like this card is going to evaporate if Carney's leadership begins changing things, not only with our relationship with the States, but here in Canada. As soon as Carney starts doing his tour across all the provinces and shaking hands and, making deals and offering people, and especially if he comes here and tries to make amends, which I don't see why he wouldn't, and, offer, roadways to perhaps getting pipelines or getting bigger piece of the pie for Alberta on what they think they're getting scammed on. I don't know what cards she's going to have left after that, because it was Trudeau before, it was carbon tax, now it's Carney and pipeline, and once those evaporate, what do we have left to gripe about?
Yeah, we said it on the show yesterday, like probably the number one thing that the Alberta government would be concerned about is that Mark Carney does really well, because all of a sudden you lose your scapegoat.
And he is doing well.
Well, it's out of the gates, but I mean, it's very, 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 very early. But you're right. I mean, like that carbon tax, with the carbon tax gone, it's taken away a lot of the narrative. Premier said that yesterday on the show. She says Mark Carney stole Pierre Poilievre's position. I know that there is that phrase around genius steals, but he kind of sort of did.
But
he came in and he swooped the game plan,
we
right?
said this before. If
it's
it's
like
a good idea, what? Who cares?
We want that.
If someone on the right says something and someone on the left says, shit, we should have thought of that, or that's a great idea, or you know what, we've been talking about that too, it's probably something we should have done, let's get on that. They'll be happy, we'll be happy. But what happens is the side that gets what they want then throws stones saying you're copying us. Who gives a shit? Right now I'm concerned with Canada and average folks who make average money doing better. And I don't care if it's the right or the left doing it in a province, or the prime minister who's on the left doing it for the country. Let's just get it done. Yeah,
Mark Doran, Polluter Pay Federation, in our chat says, I'm thinking of drawing up a list of 9 demands. Says among them, stop making attacks on land rights, stop attacking landowners. He said, or I will start a citizen initiative. And I said on the show yesterday, the beauty is you can, right? You can. They've lowered the amount. I mean, it's still like a Herculean effort to get 177,000 signatures on anything. But if you're motivated and you're organized, you can do it. Emily says, I would have way rather heard about the impending teacher strike. Sure. And obviously we'll talk about that. We bring you guys 90 plus minutes every single day, and you will hear more about that. And we'll talk about issues as they arise. But like, this is what everybody's talking about right now. One of the things, somebody stopped me on the sidewalk yesterday. We had a quick chat. He works in marketing and PR. He's got a big agency downtown Edmonton. Saw him on 104th Street. And he said, you know what freaks me out? He had seen the Smith interview on Real Talk. He says, what freaks me out is someone like Stephen Carter, the strategist that was on the show a number of days ago. Make sure you check that out. By the way, the campaign autopsies with Stephen Carter. Honestly, I think one of the funniest Real Talk episodes we've ever had. He basically picked fights with like 15 or 20 people and said exactly what he thought. And I think for the most part, he was pretty bang on. But Stephen Carter has gone on the record, obviously one of the co-hosts of The Strategists, a popular podcast. He's gone on the record saying that with his organizing and with his networks, he says he could. He's not saying he will. But he said, for example, he says, you hire anybody that's good at what they do on organizing. He said, we could get that vote in Alberta from 25, 30% up to 50% plus one easily. He says we could easily do it. And that's what this individual that stopped me on the street yesterday said. That's what freaks him out. He said, this is Brexit all over again. Right? He says this is going to be Brexit again. We talked to Naheed Nenshi about this on Monday's episode. I think that was the 5th of May. If you missed it, make sure you check it out on the heels of the NDP convention. Nenshi went exactly to that model. He says nobody in the UK, David Cameron, didn't think that Brexit was going to happen, didn't think it was going to go through, took it lightly, put a referendum in front of the people, and look at that Brexit disaster now for the UK. And I think that that's what's concerning people. You know, we ask you to leave comments on our YouTube episodes, and you can check out this one here. This is just one day ago. This is our May 8th episode with Premier. Check it out. Obviously, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts as well, but a ton of comments, and we wanted to read some of these. Somewhere in Treaty 6 says, I'm worried about healthcare, education, my insurance and utility rates, and increasing rent prices. You know, says this too is part of the Premier's mandate. And I only wish that sort of stuff hadn't have taken such a back seat, even more so now with the talk of this potential referendum. You know, Kay says, I'm an Anglo-Maritimer, says I've spent a lot of time in Quebec. I have French relatives. Quebec culture is about more than just language. from Premier. She says this was not a helpful national unity comment. We'll play that for you in just a second from the Premier. She clapped back at Quebec, just as Mr. Blanchette's oil and gas comment about Alberta was unhelpful. He said that Alberta's only culture is oil and gas. Well, he didn't say it's only culture, but he took a swipe.
Therefore,
Kay goes on. You got a man crush on that guy. Kay says other provinces feel hurt and betrayed listening to both Alberta and Quebec, needlessly stirring up separatist rhetoric right now when both premiers know it disadvantages their provinces and all others to split up our country. I don't think Kay means this, but just to clarify, that was the Bloc Québécois leader, not the Premier of Quebec. But get this. This is. Can we play that short? I think you did a really good job with it. This is talking about cultures, and a journalist asks the BQ leader about Alberta entertaining this idea, and in somewhat humorous fashion, I guess you'd call it. I don't think there's anything funny about breaking up Canada, but in somewhat of a humorous fashion, a journalist asks him, Mr. Blanchette, if he has any advice for Alberta in the separation journey. He takes a self-deprecating position off the top and acknowledges that the BQ has not been successful in doing it. So he says, so take my advice for what it's worth. But he says, you got to create a nation. You have to be a unique culture. And he goes on from there.
Define oneself as a nation. Therefore, it requires a culture of their own. And I am not certain that oil and gas qualify to define a culture.
We have a culture in Alberta. We've got a culture of entrepreneurship. We've got a culture that embraces multiculturalism, that has been built from people from all over the world. I think 163 different linguistic groups are represented here. We've got an incredible relationship and history with Indigenous partners. We have a very different culture than Quebec, because Quebec denies all those things, right? They are only about language. And I don't think that they accept the broad diversity that we do in Alberta, which I know has created such an incredible place for people around the world to keep on coming to. This is the place you achieve your dreams. This is the place aspirationally where you can build a business, start a family, buy a home. Those are things that you can't necessarily do in every part of the country. And so he's just wrong.
So that's Premier Smith. He's just wrong. She professes her love for Alberta. She describes Alberta in a factual way. I don't think she establishes that that's a unique culture, and I don't know that the argument's there for that, but that was kind of an interesting back and forth.
This is what I was just talking about. A great communicator, because she can just take a fork in the road, and like, if you put music behind that, I mean, there's an ad, talking about, and I agree with what she's saying. Alberta is a beautiful place. We do have, there is tons of different diversity going on in Alberta that people just kind of push to the wayside. They dissuade because they think, we were talking about this yesterday, if we were in a different province right now, living for the past 10 years, what would we think Alberta's culture is? And we said it right off the bat, cowboy hats and oil and gas, like Western kind of living. And resources, which is, natural gas and oil and those are the things that people think of. Now,
Krabby Chris with an interesting comment says she just described Canada.
That's true too.
Which I think is that's a one sentence way, and that's actually a beautiful thing to be aware of.
But a lot of people think we aren't diverse. A lot of people just think white guys in cowboy hats, which it's not. I live in the city. I live downtown. This building, we walk around. There's people from all different cultures, all different races, all different ethnicities walking around here, working, living, loving this province. Yeah,
Chelsea the Ginge says truck nuts do not constitute a separate culture. Jay says Brexit succeeded because of Nigel Farage and the right-wing factions who played with people's emotions. Also saw somebody else in here. I wanted to read your comment. I forget. I can't see your. But it was like Dallas GM or someone said the BQ does not speak for Quebec. Interesting perspective as well. Listen, I think that the leader of the Bloc was being somewhat flippant in his comments about Alberta, but you could tell it touched a nerve with Smith. You could tell it touched a nerve on the show. Back to the comments on YouTube. We encourage you to check out all of our episodes. You can share the content on YouTube. That's also where you can see our highlights, our shorts. You can check out Vicky Mochama's episodes, of course, of Party All the Time as well. Dam C says, I have done a considerable amount of research, and it's taken me longer than a few minutes to come to the conclusion that Alberta is a valuable partner for Canada, and continuing to be a province within Canada benefits most Albertans. Says, I come from rural Alberta where people respect each other's opinions. Even though there's disagreement, people care enough to make good decisions for the benefit of our community. And that means that sometimes people have to set aside their own wants for the greater good.
I don't like the comment of rural only agree with and respect other people's
but I think
opinions.
there is kind of a rural thing where it's like you take your side by side to the next property to get a cup of sugar. I still have this romantic idea of how it works there. Not everybody's behind their locked doors.
It's easy to respect people's opinions when they're likely, the same as yours. I mean, the same thing downtown where, voting all goes orange. I know that speaking my mind downtown, being kind of a lefter leaning guy, is probably going to be easier than when I go out and play weddings in the rural areas, but I do the same thing. I respect their opinions when I'm out there. I know where their heads are probably at. I know where their opinions kind of land. But I do think, I think people get this impression of Alberta that we're these people who are just, we all think one way and we tell everyone else to shut up. Man, Alberta has evolved in the time that I've been here. It's become way different, way more diverse, way more sympathetic. And I think the internet in general has just become a wasteland where things get painted one way. That's the opinion. The internet says it is, and that's how it is and should be. It's not. Come to Alberta. It's an awesome place to be. I've lived in tons of provinces. I've lived in the States. I moved back to BC thinking it would be a better deal for me, and I came back to Alberta because I love it here.
100%. Soon to be deleted says, we won't delete it.
Okay.
Says, I'm getting some weird comments from people saying, why are you deleting our comments? We're not deleting your comments. I don't know what you're talking about.
Don't delete any YouTube comments.
Unless it's racist or, soon to be deleted says, I can accept that separation may not be the best path for Alberta, but I don't understand why so many think we couldn't possibly benefit from a separatist movement. It seems to me that in any relationship, how you're treated is ultimately dictated by your ability to leave that relationship and your likelihood to do so. If you believe that you're not being treated in a way that you believe you should be. And there's a whole bunch of replies to that. Dwayne says Alberta can't separate. All of Alberta's on treaty land. He goes on to talk about CPP and EI and the military national parks and the RCMP. But you notice all that stuff is kind of being chipped away at too, right? CPP, the RCMP, treaty land, all that kind of stuff,
OPP.
right? So we get into that and kind of the clapping and the back and forth. 100 Nights says only 3 chiefs have spoken out of the 45 in Alberta. I mean, that's just absolutely not true. But others are saying, talking about the, how about this one? I just noticed this for the first time. Somebody just found, wow, Real Talk for the first time, and they still hate me from the Ched days. Wow, that's always nice. It's always nice on a Friday to find. Should we read this from Patty? Patty probably didn't think her comment was. She said,
it thickens the skin, Ryan.
Look at this. Yeah, let's read this. These are fun. I love these. These are great. All be danged, says Patty. The title of this video got my attention. What was our title? Our title was, exclusive, Premier Danielle Smith on Alberta's separation. That's the title of the video. Mm-hmm. And for your entertainment, this isn't even a flamethrower. I should just turn this in. You know what? Let's do it. Why don't we make this? This will be this is a way better flamethrower. Johnny, every single week, courtesy of our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, we give you a chance to send in your absolute hottest takes, your scorchers. This is what's getting under your skin. These are the burrs under your saddle. Yeah, that's right. It's the flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Right to Patty's YouTube comment. I'm reading this cold. I've not read it before. All be danged, says Patty. The title of your video got my attention, but I didn't realize it was you or that you even still had a platform from which to continue your stuff. I so remember you on the radio. Always good for a belly laugh or the opposite. So infuriating that I sent an email to Ched regarding your bold-faced lies that you continued to push regarding a certain Alberta couple and their child. Oh, Patty thinks that 18-month-olds with meningitis should be treated with fucking mustard. Patty continues and says, between you and Professor Timothy Caulfield, it's hard to decide which one most deserves to be charged with slander and lies. Meet me in court, Patty. She says, I won't bother listening to this or come back to your YouTube channel anytime soon. The bad news is that Shay Ganem is actually worse than you. Sorry, Shay. She says, Danielle Smith was such a breath of fresh air back in 2020. She knew the truth about what was going on, which is, of course, why she left the radio. This Albertan supports her and the idea of Alberta escaping the globalist agenda that is Mark Carney, no matter how it has to happen. Patty, you're not invited to my birthday party. How about this one from Blahsheep, who says, Jespo, I'm not even mad, but I just want to point out something interesting that I saw on the live today. There was so much anger toward Danielle Smith and calls for her to resign after she's only been in power for 2 years. You could say technically like 1.5 terms with the UCP. So now put yourself into the shoes of the 72% of Albertans that are now seeing a 4th term of the federal Liberals. Can you understand if you reverse the roles, seeing a 4th term of the UCP? Wouldn't you start looking elsewhere for hope? That from Blahsheep. What about this one from James, who listens in from Ontario? Thanks, James. He says, I heard a comment on Real Talk. I was appreciative about looking outside the box and what else could be done with the reduced requirements to host a referendum. Definitely worth looking at the opportunities to do a spin-up poll for the eastern slopes, the coal mining, Jespo. There has to be at least 180,000 people that would support making that a documented issue open for the public to vote on. James, you're 100% correct. How about this from Pedro, who says all this talk about Danielle Smith getting a good deal for Alberta. Meanwhile, silence about opening up Wilmore Wilderness to industrial activities like coal mines, logging, and oil and gas. Messing up the eastern slopes puts our water supply in peril and basically serves up endangered species sushi to the highest bidders. This is a disgusting lack of ethics from this UCP bunch of thugs. That from Pedro. What about this one from KP, who says, I am ready for the referendum to separate. Alberta's not been treated fairly in this country, especially over the last 10 years. If a referendum was held, I would vote to leave. But do I really want to? It's tricky. KP says, I'm fine staying in Canada, but things need to change. And to me, the best way to do that is with a strong 40 to 52% yes vote in the referendum. We need to scare the shit out of the East that the money pig is leaving its ass to get a fair shake. He goes on to say Alberta needs to act more like a big province. We'll pass BC in population soon. We're going to have the true first high-speed rail network in North America, beating Ontario, beating California, beating Texas, and we're on the track to 10 million people. Not quite. We're at 5, but still, we should have our own tax collection service, our own police force, our own pension, our own Senate seats should be voted on, and that vote should be respected. KP says, I hope Carney will be different, but will he? Unlikely. We know where his loyalties lie. And by the way, Doug Ford can go suck an egg. That from KP. How about this one from Cactus Sheriff, who says, Jespo, after your May 8th interview with Premier Smith, first few minutes, she mentions that no matter when she released Bill 54, she'd be criticized. That told me 2 things. 1, she sees criticism of her government as a personal attack. And 2, it's not good legislation. If legislation will garner skepticism and anger no matter the circumstances, maybe a government should be self-aware enough to rethink it. Also, in the first few minutes of the interview, she kept referring to upcoming by-elections as her by-elections or my by-elections. Somebody should remind her that elections in this nation belong to its citizens, not a party. And to the separatists and the 51st staters in this amazing province, I say there are always things to improve on. But if you truly believe that Canada is unfixable, the south border is open. Feel free to leave your passport with the ICE agents so you don't feel the need to return when you realize the grass is not greener on the other side. Leave Canada for those of us with the gumption and the will to do better for our nation, our province, and for our fellow citizens. And don't let the door hit your earth on the way out. Canadians don't want aspirants on our door. That from Cactus Sheriff. Jake wrote in to say, I listen to Danielle Smith on Real Talk on Spotify as I do every single day. Thank you, Jake. Says it's unbelievable how skilled she is at mind games and manipulation. On one hand, she plays the card that she never would encourage separation from Canada, and then she turns around and threatens the rest of Federation with insane ultimatums. In fact, when you asked her, if it went this far, are you prepared legacy-wise to be the premier that ushers Alberta out of Confederation, she responded with, I sure don't want to be. That's why I believe my best job is to get a better deal with Canada. Jake says essentially she's saying, I don't want to kill hostages, I just want a getaway truck and a pizza. That's what I'm working for getting for all of us. But if I don't get it, I'm going to start shooting hostages. Jake says, this truly bothers me deeply to my core. I was not born here, but Alberta's been my home for more than 20 years, and I do not want to leave. However, if this insanity continues, that's exactly what I'll do. I will never be put in a situation, a sovereign nation of Alberta. I'd rather take my chances with the cartel than ever put myself in that type of scenario. Imagine a backwards Texas on steroids ran by a bunch of redneck Qua. I trust the Confederation of Canada and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to protect me as a trans man, but if this government was left unchecked, I would just straight up not feel safe here. Peace, love, and go Oilers! That from Jake. And how about this one from Darian, who wonders, Jespo, this longest ballot committee, those that were responsible for 91 candidates in Pierre Poilievre's Carleton riding, are trying to get 200 names in for the by-election in Alberta. Why are they only going after Pierre? Why didn't they go after Mark Carney? Why didn't they go after Jagmeet Singh? Because they didn't have to. He says, who are they funded by? That from Darian, getting us thinking on this edition of The Flamethrower, presented by the DQs in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. When you're there picking up a Flamethrower signature stack burger, you make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent ya. We're back at it on Monday morning. Can't wait to talk to you then. In the meantime, like Jake said, peace, love, and go Oilers!
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jespersen, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjespersen.com.